Are you ready for the liberal world order? It's coming. It's here.
You and me live in completely different worlds.
What do you mean? The liberal world order's here. That's why you have to put up with these high gas prices. It's for the liberal.
I don't know. You keep track of like random mainstream media news, gaffes and clips and stuff, and base your life on those, and I just ignore them.
Well, that's the title of this week's episode is the liberal world order is here. Well, you gotta. I know. I don't really. I just get the clips and.
Remember when Rabbit Hole used to be a Bitcoin show?
Well, it is. It still is a Bitcoin show. We were just talking. You forgot probably one of the coolest Bitcoin stories of the week. I had to put it on the list. I'm not gonna. Maybe when we get to it, I'll call it out.
Tapsigner demo.
Yes. Yeah. And Rodolfo even reached out to you to put it on the list. You forgot. Rodolfo, you don't even have to remind me. I just knew. Hey, Tapsigner demo's out. We're going to talk about it.
Did you not tag me in the RHR stream?
Oh,
there we go. Retweet.
I forgot to set the tweet.
Marty's in Jersey at the Jersey Shore for good old times.
You know,
well, we had like what, a year and a half of rips while you were doing it on that porch.
Yeah, this porch and right above me in my father-in-law's bedroom. 2 years. March? Yeah, a year and a half.
He's using the bedroom right now?
I don't know. I don't know if he's up there. We just came in.
I feel like that would have been good for nostalgia's sake.
Yeah.
Just kick him out of the bedroom and be like, I need to record in your bedroom. Sorry, sir. I gave you grandchildren.
I gave you 2 grandchildren. Moved your daughter across Texas. Get out of your room. I need to record RHR.
It's important.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I mean, to set the tone of the episode, the liberal world order is here. This is all right, Carl. Let's start with that clip, and we'll go into it because I do.
We're gonna start with that fucking clip.
Yeah, let's start because I think it sets the tone.
That shouldn't even be part of the show. Okay, continue.
It sets the tone because there's a lot of the macroeconomic news that we're going to talk about. Really, I think it's seated in this theme that this guy was talking about. He's like Biden's economic advisor or something like that. Ex BlackRock, by the way. Car, do you have the clip? No, it's not that one.
That's a different non-Bitcoin story that we're covering this week. Courtesy of Marty.
That's an important one too. Liberal world order is here. Here, Car.
Sustainable. What do you say to those families who say, listen, we can't afford to pay $4.85 a gallon for months, if not years. This is just not sustainable.
Well, what you heard from the president today was a clear articulation of the stakes. This is about the future of the liberal world order, and we have to stand firm.
Yeah, so enjoy the high gas prices, the high food prices, and the economic uncertainty as we potentially head into a recession. Many are saying potentially even a depression. It's for the liberal world order. We need to stand up against all the illiberal people in the world. And again, this is going to be the theme of the episode because I think a lot of these macroeconomic topics that we have on the list will tie back to it. We are going to start, as we always do, with Bitcoin, with Clark Moody's dashboard. Went to lunch. We pumped over 21,000. We're sitting at 21,380 cuck bucks according to Clark's dashboard. Sats per dollar is 4,677 sats per cuck buck. The market cap of Bitcoin right now is $408.1 billion. We're at block height 744,033. Got a 33 in the block today. We had a difficulty adjustment yesterday. A lot of fluctuation in hash rate during that epoch. If you remember 2 rabbit hole recaps ago, the initial estimate for the difficulty adjustment we had yesterday was like 2.5%. Last week when we recorded, it was actually going to be an upward difficulty adjustment. But yesterday, when the difficulty epoch ended, we actually had a negative adjustment downwards 1.4%. Blocks were coming in at 10 minutes of 4 seconds on average. We are currently 1,887 blocks away from the next difficulty adjustment, which is estimated to be on the 20th, which is 13 days from now, so a week from next Wednesday. Obviously, there's not a lot of good block data in this epoch yet. We're only 126 blocks away, so it's not a lot of data. Currently, it's looking like we'll have a 14.1% upward adjustment. Do not take that too hard, though. We're currently 4,330. Yeah, the number means nothing. 4,343 transactions in Clark's mempool. I've been following the Slush Pool bot, Telegram, and Twitter, because that's where I mine. There's been a lot of good fee revenue the last few days on the blocks. I've seen a lot of
our boy Ty sets that Telegram channel's notifications to the cash register sound.
He does. It's that's very smart, Ty. You're making. That's the best part about that notification when you get the Slush Pool Telegram notification. It's like, hey, I just stacked some sets passively there. There are currently 4,840.63 Bitcoin.
New all-time high.
New all-time high on the show, I believe. If any of you freaks are there, like we said last week, we'd like to get some crowdsource, like data tracking here for us, particularly around Whirlpool. I believe it's a new all-time high.
It's absolutely a new all-time high, period. Not even just on rabbit hole.
Let's go. New all-time high, Samourai Whirlpool. So yeah, there we are. Been a crazy week in Bitcoin, as well as outside of Bitcoin. I mean, yesterday we had Voyager file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in New York City. There's been a bit more clarity with the BlockFi situation since we last met. Obviously, we had that breaking news last week that turned out to be not so.
I don't know about that.
I mean, 25 million.
I mean, they said so. Okay, let's jump into it.
FTX has the ability to purchase it up to 240 million, so they could.
So they're providing $400 million credit line to BlockFi from FTX, and they have the ability to purchase it for up to 240 million, whatever the fucking up to 240 million means. So the difference between, from my eyes, the difference between this and the CNBC article is they did the PR spin on this article.
Yeah, the highest FTX will have to pay is $240 million. If they do pay that much, they could potentially buy it for $25 million. What do you think? This is a bit of an odd deal. I've never seen a deal structured this way, where like FTX has the potential to buy BlockFi at some point in the medium term. Like is BlockFi?
All I know is if FTX has an avenue to buy BlockFi for super cheap, they're gonna fucking do it. So it all seems just like PR bullshit to me.
Yeah, I mean, FTX has come out in the last week, so they have $2 billion to backstop the contagion in these markets. They're looking to buy up a lot of these lending platforms. They've talked publicly about mining as well. This whole situation of FTX stepping in and scooping up a lot of assets in the space honestly makes me feel a bit uneasy. I don't trust Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX that much. I don't think they're very well-intentioned, particularly when it comes to Bitcoin specifically. Obviously, we mentioned it last week, but Sam has publicly stated that he is not a fan of proof of work and favors proof of stake blockchains. And so the notion of SBF and FTX scooping up a lot of Bitcoin companies or Bitcoin-related companies, more importantly, Bitcoin mining companies.
Didn't he come out and say he's not interested in miners? It was just like reported out of context.
I'm not sure. I didn't catch that. Maybe he did. I was not aware of that.
I mean, I doubt he does any kind of mining deals, but maybe he does.
He sits on the board of Genesis Mining, which is one of the biggest miners in the world, which is interesting. So we shall see. I recorded an episode with Edward Evenson from Brains last Friday after RHR. Very dense episode if you're interested in an update on the landscape of the mining industry, what's going on with ASIC prices, what the geographic distribution of mining's looking like. We talked about cool immersion systems and the 3-nanometer chips and other cooling tech that is out there. Very dense episode with Edward. If you haven't checked that out, you want to learn more about mining or the state of the mining industry, go check it out. He said that conservatively, he believes that 15% of hash rate is, or excuse me, 10% conservatively of hash rate is in China. He wouldn't be surprised if it's like closer to 20% though. So all those estimates out there, they're saying that there's 0% hash rate in China are patently false.
It wasn't the main one Cambridge, and they came out and said it was 20 or something. They like redid it.
Did they? I'm not sure. I know they
Cambridge
came out
was the big one that said 0, and then they changed it, and it was somewhere between 10 to 20%.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that Cambridge methodology. There's a lot of
it's mostly a guessing game. Mostly a guessing game.
Yeah. So yeah, the mining industry still been precarious. I mean, we had news this week of Core Scientific, which is one of the largest miners in the world, potentially the largest miner in the world. They sold, I believe, 75% of their Bitcoin stash in the beginning of June. How much?
I didn't realize Hive was so much bigger than them.
Hive is bigger than them? From a public markets, from a hash rate perspective or a valuation perspective?
Hive released a report today that they said they mined 278 Bitcoin in June. And in that Core Scientific report, didn't they say that they only are averaging 40 Bitcoin a month?
I think last I checked, Core was printing like 30 Bitcoin a day.
Maybe that's it per day, not per month, and that's where I fucked it up.
Yeah,
that makes more sense. I was really confused.
Yeah, 36.9 Bitcoin per day.
There you go. I connected them the wrong way.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. You mentioned Hive too. Hive doesn't only mine Bitcoin. I believe they mine others. If you look at their quarterly report, they have
mine ETH too, at the very least.
Yeah, and their financials say they hold Bitcoin and Bitcoin equivalents, which is the altcoins that they mine as well. But yeah, no, I mean, I think many were shocked by the Core news specifically, having been around for so long and selling where they did in June at relatively low price levels.
Higher than the current price level.
Yeah.
It was what, 23,000 average?
Yeah, I believe so. So they sold a bunch of Bitcoin, take care of some debt, to wipe out some debt, and I believe prepayments for ASICs and some electricity cost as well. So yeah, I mean, I think it's very interesting because this is like probably the first major cycle, because Riot went public in December 2017. So we've had the first time Riot went public, I think, at the height of the 2017 bull market. We've obviously went all the way down to 3,500 and all the way up to 69,000 and back down to 20. So we've had like our first full, and it'll be interesting to see how these publicly traded miners specifically change their treasury management strategy moving forward. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of smarter treasury management as we move into the future. Like, if you're thinking from a mining perspective, like the ideal scenario is that you mine a bunch of Bitcoin, and acquire ASICs at the cheapest point possible. You mine as the bull market's going, and then I think the strategy should be like if you get X multiples above the previous all-time high, you sell Y percentage of your stack and lock in some gains and keep that on the cash side of the balance sheet.
So like historically, miners sell to pay their costs because the costs are in fiat. But this is the first real cycle where large miners had access to easy credit because they were large publicly traded or just large companies in America. So they had access to really easy credit. They could leverage up instead, flood their balance sheet with as much Bitcoin as possible to take advantage of that micro strategy in the public markets. And as a result, they had to panic sell the bottom, a lot of them. But I think there's a lot of corollaries there just with average Bitcoiners as well, right? Which is it takes a couple cycles to learn to stay humble.
Yeah, I saw you retweeting a thread you wrote in 2018.
I don't tweet new things anymore. I just retweet 2018 stuff.
Let's pull that up. What was your advice in that thread? Because you did give a warning to people in December 2017, like, hey, now's a good time to.
It was a 10 tweet thread that got very little engagement in 2018. That could have been summed up with "Stay humble, stack sats," but it predated "Stay humble, stack sats."
Wait, when did Stay Humble Stack Sats come into being?
Maybe like 2019.
Stay Humble Stack Sats still good advice? I'm hearing that it's terrible advice.
I don't know what kind of shit you're smoking if you're going after people that are doing the most conservative investment strategy possible in the Bitcoin world. So,
yeah.
Sad shit.
Very sad shit. What else is going on? Let's move on to some good news. I mean, the miners selling. Is there anything else you want to touch on the mining side of things?
Well, we had a couple. Do we have a couple mining? So I just to circle back. We had that Hive news. Hive is still stacking. They didn't actually sell any of their Bitcoin, but based on monthly versus daily numbers, Core is 3 times bigger than them. But yeah, they did their risk management correctly, and they never had to sell any Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And I don't think we have any other mining news on the list. I imagine this is all public miners because they have to disclose this shit. There's definitely a lot of panic happening separate from that. And I keep hearing bad things coming out of Compass.
What are you hearing?
Concrete. And I can't.
Yeah, I'm hearing allegations of potential cloud mining, like rehypothecating ASICs.
Yeah, that's from our boy Stoney. Because I heard that they're not letting people get their ASICs back, but I don't know the specific details of that. And but I'm just hearing troubles at the company. But it's yeah, I don't want to like burn my sources, so I'm not going to say more than that.
Okay.
But yeah, what we said a couple of weeks ago holds true. Like, if you can get stuff out of there at a loss, do it. Just, I think that's the risk profile right now.
Yeah.
Get your ASIC back, do it. If you can get whatever, if you can cancel your payment plans, do it. Just fucking cut.
Well, that'd be interesting if they're really not delivering ASICs, because that was one of their main selling points. When their hosting stuff started going down, it's like, oh no, we'll send your ASIC to you. So if that's turning out not to be true,
that specifically was from someone sending an email to Stoney and then Stoney posting a screenshot. It's the source on that.
Yeah. We shall see. We'll let that story develop as it moves on. We did
One thing that's interesting about this cycle is I was expecting like a death spiral FUD by now. But hash
No, I
is
think
holding up pretty well in comparison to last cycle.
I think you thoroughly destroyed the Death Spiral FUD the last time you got engaged with Ari Paul on it. So
Is he still on Twitter? Because I've been blocked since then. That was like 4 years ago.
I think he might be. He's still saying very stupid
Does
stuff.
he still have a fund?
I think so. I'm not sure. He may be. Yeah, he's. I think he's been fudding fee security, the long-term security of the network because of the lack of subsidy.
That started coming up again. We hear that every cycle.
Yeah. No, and I mean, again, so for any of you freaks who are relatively new to Bitcoin, obviously there's only 21 million Bitcoin. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin at some point in the future. We're going to hit that 21 million supply, and then no new Bitcoin are going to be issued, and so the network is going to have to sustain itself on transaction fees alone. The mining industry is going to have to be incentivized to actually deploy capital, acquire miners and energy assets, and plug in via the transaction fees included in a block alone. And there's a lot of FUD. I mean, even prominent Bitcoiners, Peter Todd, Rusty Russell, a bunch of others believe that we're going to need tail inflation, so that we're going to have to break the 21 million Bitcoin supply cap and add a tail inflation of 1.5% to 2% or some arbitrary number. And I mean, I think this is nothing more than mental masturbation. Like, I think trying to predict the future necessary security spend for the Bitcoin network using stats and data derived from the network's usage between 2009 and today is completely asinine. Like, if Bitcoin is as successful as we think it is and can be as a peer-to-peer digital cash, there's going to be significantly more demand, and block space is scarce. So I think that there should be sufficient fee market. However, there are many out there who don't think that's the case. I also think you can apply Jevons paradox to Bitcoin's UTXOs, where the more utility you give a UTXO via things like Taproot, Moosig, multi-sig, and all these things, the covenants potentially, the more demand you're going to have for it, because the more potential use cases there are, and that will also help a fee market develop. Are you a tail inflation guy, Matthew?
If they think there should be a tail emission, they should fork one in and see what happens.
Yeah, it's the best way to sort of destroy that argument right there. It's just so annoying that, I mean, especially like the altcoiners use it as, not that I really care about the altcoiners, it's just annoying to have to hear it pop up once every 2 years. Bitcoin's long-term securities bunk. It's like, don't think so. Like Matt said, fork the code.
It would be a hard fork, so you would get equivalent amount of Bitcoin on the new chain that has a tail emission, a forever supply of Bitcoin at some fixed amount, and then the market will the market will sort that one out.
We shall see. See you on the field.
And if you're in a coma, Marty loves people that are in comas. He's a big coma guy. If you're in a coma, you just sit tight, and you still have the same amount of Bitcoin regardless of which chain wins. Yeah.
You always got to be thinking of the man in the coma. I mean, I'm not like a big fan of people in comas. I feel bad for them.
Big coma fan.
I'm always feeling for them. I'm thinking about them. Like, hey, what happens when you wake up? Or more importantly, what's going to happen when you're asleep?
Coma under the table. He's never disclosed that.
Big Coma is my biggest backer.
Yeah.
I'm here. That's actually why I have this like droning, low 70s radio voice. It's actually to try to lull you all into a coma. I thought we were going to take the soundboard away from him.
Well, you're going to have to come down here and take it from me yourself.
No, I'll be there next week. So
our boy Tucson Bitcoin was requesting it in the comments, so I had to give him what he needed.
Tucson. Had the pleasure of meeting him. in Houston earlier this year. I hope all is well, brother. Should we pitch Nashville real quick? Nashville pitch before we go to the next topic.
Yeah, so I mean, we have the Nash Bitcoin meetup, the monthly Nash Bitcoin meetup happening July 13th. A lot of people from the Austin crew are coming in, including Marty and Carr. People from around the country are coming in, expecting over 200 people. We will be doing a live party rip from here with some special guests I'm pretty excited about. There will not be a live audience, so do not come here expecting to have a live audience. But it will be a party, and the meetup is always special. It's always a good time. And if you want more information, go to nashbitcoiners.com.
Join us.
Consider joining us. Yeah. People are coming in, early, staying late. It's going to be great.
I'll be coming in early, staying late.
And it's hosted at Bitcoin Park.
Which is a beautiful... Actually, I can't even speak. I haven't seen it yet. I'll let you freaks know how it is when I get there next week.
Marty's going to be so amazed he's going to go straight into a coma.
It's a pretty cool news. OpenNode, Lemon Cash have teamed up to onboard 1 million Argentines to the Bitcoin Lightning Network. So Lemon Cash is an exchange and wallet provider down in Argentina. And it seems like, again, they're partnering with OpenNode, which provides Lightning services and node operations for individuals and companies alike to attempt to onboard 1 million people in Argentina, which has seen a 12-month rolling period of 60% inflation. It ranks 10th globally in the adoption of cryptocurrencies by country. So this is cool to see. OpenNode extending its tentacles far around the world in Argentina. Wasn't there like aren't they trying to ban Bitcoin in Argentina though?
I mean, they should be. From like government perspective, I mean, I don't want them to. Argentina has historically horrible inflation over and over again, and long history of capital controls where they, fuck with you and stop you from using your money the way you want to use your money and stop you from getting out of their shitcoin into hard money. So I don't see why this time would be any different. Obviously, Lemon Cash is, my understanding is it's a KYC exchange, so that's probably where they would hit is the KYC exchanges, the regulated exchanges. But clearly, that seems like that's not been the case yet. We would need some freaks in Argentina to phone us in on that. But the Argentine people are very good at P2P money transfer stuff. And historically, that's been dollars for their local currency. But I don't see why Bitcoin would be any different.
Car, I just put a tweet in the TFTC chat. I think this is, this discussion reminded me of this stat that I found. I mean, we've known that Argentina's had high inflation throughout our lifetimes, at least. But I did some digging when the IMF did another loan with Argentina earlier this year around May, and I was like, all right, how many IMF loans? It seems like Argentina's getting IMF loans like every other week. Like, how many have they gotten historically, and how bad is their problem? And so, astonishingly, since 1944, so going back all the way almost 80 years now, for almost 80 years, the average annual inflation rate of Argentina is 192%, which is insane. They've just been in perpetual hyperinflation for the better part of a century. They joined the IMF. So Argentina joined the IMF in 1956, and they participated in 21 standby agreements, which are essentially loans, since 1958. So that's roughly one every 3 years that the Argentine government has to go to the IMF and get bailed out since 1958. So they've had
fucking horrible.
Right? And so this is
absolute tragedy.
Exactly. I think it's important to really understand this history here, going back to the 40s and 50s. Like the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, is supposed to be a bank that helps pull emerging markets and emerging economies out of the gutter. But it seems like, to me, like if it hasn't worked 21 times over the course of almost 70 years, why does Argentina keep going back to the IMF trough? Is the IMF actually helping these countries, or is it hurting and exacerbating their hyperinflation problems in Argentina specifically? I would argue the latter, that the IMF is a parasitic organization that is only going to destroy your country if you engage in a standby agreement with it or a loan. Yeah, I'm happy you brought up Argentina that I thought of this because I remember back in May, just doing this research. I was like, holy crap, 192% annual inflation since 1944, and they've gotten 21 IMF loans since 1958.
Yeah, I mean, we have Stefan in the comments who reminded me that was the recent news. The recent news was IMF had a new deal with them, and as part of that deal, they asked them to crack down on crypto usage.
Yes. Thank you, Stefan. That is what. Yeah. So coming full circle to the IMF is like, no, you can't. If you do get this loan, you have to stop your citizens from acquiring Bitcoin, which is insane. You have to keep coming back to the trough of the IMF roughly every 3 years, and you can't let your citizens access this escape boat, which is just insanity. It's evil. It's a liberal world order, freaks. It's the theme of the episode. This ties back to the liberal world order. They want these centralized institutions like the IMF, the BIS, the Fed, the ECB, all these central authorities to granularly control your economies. And if you're an Argentine citizen, I think you should be absolutely shocked and disgusted that your government has essentially sold your country out to a supranational banking entity that is the IMF.
And Marty keeps referring to the Argentine government as like a single entity. It's important to realize that they've had many turnovers in governance, and they've all done the same fucking thing.
Yes. Because the IMF comes and says, hey, we'll help you out. We'll help you out every 3 years.
Most of this shit always comes down to incentives. It's like the politicians, the elites, they do fine. Mm-hmm. And they just destroy their country.
Yeah.
Easy
so
money.
It's interesting to see OpenNode and Lemon Cash forging forward with his deal in the face of that clause in the IMF loan that was definitely agreed to in May of this year.
Good to see.
Great to see. We already talked about BlockFi, but in that same vein, the contagion theme in the quote-unquote crypto markets over the last few months, 3 Hours Capital officially filed for bankruptcy, and the first time I've ever seen Chapter 15 bankruptcy, which essentially, I think everybody did a little research on Chapter 15 bankruptcy when this news dropped. Since 3 Hours Capital is this entity out of Singapore and they have assets here in the U.S., they have to file this specific chapter so that they can protect their U.S. assets as a foreign entity.
Yeah, I mean, 3 Hours is at the heart of a lot of this contagion, but they're clearly not the only ones to blame. It seems like there was a handful of large parties that were basically just loaning each other shit tons of money.
Yeah.
And inflating this whole kind of DeFi yield bullshit that we saw this most recent cycle.
You have to Fugazi.
And it was not Bitcoiners' faults.
Bitcoiners who were getting greedy for the 6% yield.
Well, it was not plebs' faults.
No.
Even though they're the target of all the hate right now, as is tradition.
Yeah. But leading into the 3 Hours Capital thing, it's like Suzu selling like two $30 million houses in Singapore. They were really conning people. I guess maybe we can take the conversation here. Like, do you think these guys are straight up Bernie Madoff style, like we know we're ripping our faces off scammers, or do you think they were their quote unquote success was just a product of the money printer go brr gravy train, and they had all these paper gains and these obscure DeFi protocols and shitcoins that they really thought they were like master investors?
I think I mean, ego definitely plays a part of it. People think they're geniuses in an uptrend. I think David Bailey's take is still one of the best takes, which is, you know, I think they were heavily exposed to Luna and Terra, and when that blew up, they were completely underwater, and that's when like the real fraud kind of started.
Yeah.
But and like the ego probably blinded them from how much risk they were taking on in the Luna Terra side.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a pretty conservative diagnosis of what went down there. But yeah, it definitely feels like a significant amount of fraud happened.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, fraud. And so I went on this, I got asked to go on this like YouTuber show yesterday. This dude, Matt Kors, I think he's like a Wall Street Bets type guy. And I think he was a fan of Voyager. So like 3 Hours Capital, another company. I had no idea who this company was until last week.
Voyager, right? Did not know they existed.
Didn't know they existed either, but
Canadian
apparently
company.
Massive, publicly traded, pretty massive, and
Canada.
They just filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy in New York yesterday.
Getting all the chapters.
Getting all the chapters here in this contagion event, and it became well known via this bankruptcy that they had a $670 million unsecured loan out to 3 Hours Capital.
So no collateral.
No collateral, no assets put up to get the line of credit. It was just given to them, and they went and lost it all. Half of it, or more than half of it, 350 million was USDC, and the rest of it was Bitcoin. And it's like, so number one, like, yeah, there's a very good chance that 3 Hours Capital was engaged in some type of fraud, trying to make up for that Terra Luna blow up. But on the other side too, like Voyager, like how are you going to give a $670 million unsecured loan to a single hedge fund? Like, what is your due diligence and your risk management strategy like at that company? Like, how does that get okayed to give out close to $1 billion with no collateral put up to one entity? Like, yeah, I think that specific transaction highlights the irresponsibility in that overarching. It doesn't seem like there's many adults in the room that actually know how to run businesses confidently and manage risk appropriately. Like the fact that got okayed as a publicly traded company as well is somewhat astonishing.
This is kind of, so like we've talked about this in the past. I think this is kind of where like the potential fraud kind of happened. Obviously Voyager is responsible for their own actions as well. But who knows what kind of documentation and whatnot was provided to them by 3 Arrows, in terms of, you know, you said due diligence. Maybe they just trusted their due diligence. And as we've said previously, it just seems like 3 Hours was treated like a AAA yield source, right? They saw all these complicated things, DeFi, all these things that had a ton of risk associated with them. And 3AC was like treated as a way less risky option for generating return on their customer deposits. But then 3 Hours Capital went and did all the really risky shit. So they like kind of shielded them so they could look the other way. But yeah, it's just another case of people not staying humble.
Yeah. Another interesting thing with this Voyager situation too is I think FTX stepped in with like a $75 million line of credit to help stop the bleeding. Like that's obvious in their.
Yeah, they gave a line of credit to Voyager.
But then it's becoming like I saw Dylan LeClaire tweeting yesterday that Voyager had something like a $350 million loan out to FTX too. Did you see that?
To maybe Alameda instead, or something to that effect. Because so Alameda is
Alameda gave the $75 million line of credit.
Right. So Alameda is SBF's hedge fund, and then FTX is SBF's exchange. So they're technically two different entities, but they're the same entity. But then, so Dylan, our boy Dylan, made some claims there, and then today, I'm pretty sure SBF subtweeted him and was like, before you go running your mouth, or I mean, I'm definitely paraphrasing. SBF didn't say running your mouth. You can ask for comment first, or you can learn how bankruptcy proceedings work. So it seems like SBF has some kind of angle there.
Yeah.
I mean, you can talk about like the principles or the ethics or morals of SBF and FTX, but I mean, he's to me, he seems like a very sophisticated actor. Like, yeah. I don't think I don't think he's making decisions at whim here. And I'm pretty sure he can throw his dick around when he's offering these different things to these different companies.
The visualization of him throwing a stick around is not what I really want in my mind right now. I can't believe you have these soundboards memorized already, too.
You teed me up.
Yeah, but with Voyager, I mean, so again, Parker explained this when he was on the show a couple weeks ago on TFTC. When it comes to BlockFi, Celsius, Voyager, like for any of you freaks who may be coming to the show more recently, you have to understand, like, you don't own any Bitcoin. Like, if you go read the Voyager bankruptcy filings, you'll see, like, in the section they had to list their top 50 unsecured creditors, and that is what you are, no matter if you have $10 million or $100 on these services. You are considered an unsecured creditor. Like, and so if they lose all their money, you go to bankruptcy, you're not going to get it all back. You actually, because that was the question this guy asked, but I actually felt bad for this Matt Kors guy. He seems like a nice gentleman, and I had no idea. It seems like I became more aware of it throughout the conversation that I think him and his audience were pumping Voyager and had significant amount of capital on it, and I was just there, guns blazing, like, yeah, you guys are fucked. All the money's gone. You're probably not going to get any back.
That's fucked up. Yeah, they even had like the shitcoin terminology. Like every time they release a press release, they're like, "Hey, Voyagers, we have an update on you not getting your money."
Yeah,
it's always a red flag. I feel like when they have like a name for
Celsians, like, Voyagers.
Yeah. If a company is calling you a name while taking your money, I just feel like, I don't know.
What if we call people freaks?
Yeah, but we're not taking their money.
Yeah, it's true. Only for shoutouts. We don't have any shoutouts this week. Let me check, make sure. We're just gonna have to go straight to boost. We got a lot of boost this week. Oh, wait. We do have one shout out. We'll read it now.
Yeah,
Hi.
Vegas, right. The Hexicans is another one. Is that what they call themselves, or is that a derogatory term for them?
Whoa, why would it be derogatory? Hexicans.
I don't know.
Speaking of Vake, he did buy a shout out. Hi from Vake. That's the shout out. Thank you, Vake.
Thanks, Vake. Thank you for your support.
Participating in the live chat and the shout outs.
Yeah. You did that as you said with no shout outs, right?
Must have. Yeah, it came through lightning. 3:36. I did it 19 minutes ago. Yeah, Yeah, Voyager's going down.
Vake says they do call themselves Hexicans. And Vake's the authority on this, so we're just going to go with that. See, there's a trend there. There's a trend there. And
Yes,
like, what was like Luna had one too, right?
Lunatics, right?
Lunatics. Yeah. See, there's a trend.
Yeah. If your shitcoin is calling you some cheesy name, you may want to run away. As
If your shitcoin's calling you anything, probably should stay humble and stack sets.
If you're a Voyager, so tying up the Voyager thing, there was a lot of people who were like, "Oh, Voyager is FDIC insurance,"
Nope.
but I don't think that's the case. If you're out there,
Well, first of all, they're Canadian.
they filed bankruptcy in New York State, so they have to have some U.S. entity here.
But yeah, it came out afterwards that there's no FDIC insurance. I mean, they're protection for the customers. I know that my understanding is for USDC, for all the USDC holders together, they share a single $250,000 FDIC insurance plan. So they can all, if USDC goes down, they can all take their little piece of that $250K.
There were some big USDC rumors going around last week, or like last Friday.
Look, the most proof of that is that Jeremy Allaire decided that he was going to come out on Twitter and release a thread about how everything is fine, which, you know, is pretty much what happens every time before everything turns out to not be fine.
Yeah. But if USDC specifically goes down, having done some research over the last week after the rumors came out, if you look at who their banks are and who else is using their banks, if you have a run on those two particular banks in the industry, there's very few banks that will actually give Bitcoin-related companies bank accounts. So if USDC goes down and takes those banks down with it, that could be very interesting. I'm not saying this is likely. I'm not saying this is happening.
It'd be really fucking bad.
It'd be really bad.
It was just funny because like all the Tether truthers have been saying like Tether is the systemic risk, but particularly like USDC is like fully all throughout like the DeFi ecosystem as well.
Yeah,
like what Maker now is, like Maker's backed by USDC as well.
Yeah, decentralized finance with a KYC AML stablecoin. Yeah, so hopefully, I mean, Novo came out today and said the deleveraging is over. Hopefully we don't have a run.
He also has a lunatic tattoo.
He's a lunatic. He's a lunatic.
He was a lunatic. Past tense. Remember, he wrote the piece. He said, "This tattoo will always remind me to stay humble."
Did he add stack sats behind it?
No, just stay humble.
Yeah. Stay humble and stack sats, I would say.
I mean, but that's really one of the fucked up parts of all of this is that so to the freaks that don't know what FDIC insurance is, FDIC insurance is a U.S. government backstop for bank accounts. So if you have, for every individual bank account you have, a savings account, checking account in the United States, up to $250,000 of it is insured if the bank fails. The government will just print that money and give you up to $250K per account. These different yield providers, and I say yield, in quotes, basically pitched these accounts as alternatives to savings account. Your savings account gives you like pennies even if you have a ton of money in it because the interest rates were so low. Use our accounts instead, and you don't even need Bitcoin volatility risk because you do it in USDC and you get whatever percentage we're offering. And they basically insinuated that they were an equivalent to the savings accounts, but in practice, they were really high risk products that were funded by doing extremely risky loans to a small group of large players in the space that were all interconnected. And this was the result. So, there's obviously like a legal definition of fraud, but there was definitely a shit ton of misleading marketing that happened, that led average people to like lose large amounts of their life savings. Like, I mean, Grubel's posted a screenshot of like a Reddit thread. I don't know from which one of these ones it was, but it was like, people that had like their whole life savings were in one of these accounts and they just got completely wiped out and they can't afford rent now. And meanwhile, we have very influential people on Twitter saying that plebs are the problem here, that plebs are the toxic ones, that people that stay humble and stack sats are the problem. We didn't cause any of that shit. They did.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, we've gotten, I mean, I know I have, and I'm probably certain that you have as well, received DMs of a number of people thanking me and you for the advice that we've given them over the last 4 years to stay humble, stack sats, get your Bitcoin off exchange, off these third-party services. It is this weird projection that's going on that toxic maxis have led to this. It's like, did we really pump Terra Luna? Wasn't Udi one of like the biggest Terra pumpers in the market in like February of this year? Is it really toxic to say, hey, we've been around the block for, been here for like 8 years, 9 years almost, watching these market cycles, and may have learned a thing or two throughout that almost decades-long experience, and just going to advise you to stay away from the siren calls of shit coins and stick to Bitcoin and learn how to create and secure private public key pairs. Is that so toxic? I don't think so.
This happens every cycle, but it just doesn't get old. It doesn't get easier.
Yeah.
It doesn't get old. It has gotten very old, but it does. If anything, it seems more vicious this time around. Probably because the magnitude of losses is way bigger. So the insecurity of certain people tends to result in them lashing out more than in the past.
Yeah. But
it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing that Twitter built an app that is both so fucking amazing and so fucking horrible at the same time, all the time.
Why do you say it's horrible?
It just, I mean, lately there's just days that I just like open up Twitter and I do like one or two scrolls. I'm like, fuck this shit. Just put it away. But obviously Twitter is an extremely powerful platform that enabled us to meet and enabled a lot of other people to meet and enables a lot of great discussion. It's just both at the same time. It's pretty remarkable, really.
Yeah. It's definitely
also the other thing that we see every cycle. I think one of my favorite things is nostalgia and connecting things in the past is the tweet deleting and the blocking, which is extremely frustrating because whenever these blowouts happen, people hide behind the blocks, people hide behind the tweet deletes. And those same exact people are the same type of people that will go back, find a shit post from, 3 years ago or whatever, and try and run circles on you while they have you blocked. Which is just, I don't know. It's just weak shit. It's weak bullshit. Yeah, I don't have time for that.
That's what Ari Paul's been doing too for the last 4 years.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know. I don't even know if he exists or not because I've just been blocked. Yeah. And now Twitter has that fucking horrible feature of restricting replies too, which makes it even worse. They don't even have to manually block you. Just only allow their filter bubble to reply.
Well, then you can quote tweet them and dunk on them via quote tweet.
The important part of the reply is not to dunk on them. The important part of the reply is for their audience to see another perspective, and that gets lost.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yeah, Twitter is a cruel mistress, double-edged sword, a yin and a yang. It's incredible and it's terrible, and especially in bear markets. But so it's funny, like 2016, right before we began to climb higher, we had Mike Hearn rage quit. Like there's just always tumult.
I that one too.
There's always tumult right around the bottom. I'm not trying to call a bottom here either. We'll get to the macro part of the discussion later. And
when did you call Pete Clownward, Marty?
About this time last year.
I'm pretty sure, like, there are very few people that can be public in this industry for longer than a few years without completely losing their mind or letting ego take the best of them, or a combination of the two. And that is great. That's a feature, not a bug. But this industry, over the long scale, particularly to public people, just chews them up and spits them out. It's just I mean, think about it. There's just really not that many public people that last more than 6 to 8 years without completely losing their mind.
How do we prevent ourselves from losing our minds?
We're doing it right now. We just do the key is our weekly set.
I think so. Yeah, our weekly struggle sessions. We meet here, freaks.
I think the key is to stay fucking humble, but I'm just a broken record. I should just put "stay humble" on the soundboard, and then I don't even have to say it anymore. But that's the key. The key is to stay humble and just be in it for the long haul, and not let your ego get the best of you.
Yeah, that's why. I mean,
but why do I say it's a feature, not a bug? I say it's a feature, not a bug, because there's no leaders in Bitcoin.
No.
Right? And that's key. It stops the capture to a degree.
Yeah. There are no leaders. Do not look at us as leaders. Do not trust us. I'm an idiot, specifically. Definitely don't. They have this podcast, newsletter, maybe a VC in the mining industry. I'm an idiot at the end of the day. Don't trust me. Please don't trust me. I'm kidding.
You're kidding. You shouldn't. You definitely shouldn't.
No, don't trust me. I don't think. I mean, probably not an idiot, but
I want as many people as possible to take control into their own hands, to have personal responsibility, to empower themselves, and then to return the favor to others. Go out, help your friends and family, but don't help them get dependent on you. Help them be independent themselves.
Yes. Keep a job. Multiple revenue streams, highly recommended. Stay sane. Keep a hobby. I like to, my hobby is putting on the tinfoil hat and thinking about how the liberal world order is trying to destroy our lives.
That's your hobby, Marty? That's not your lifestyle?
Might be a lifestyle. We do have one more insolvency to talk about. I've never heard of this exchange either, out of India.
They were pretty big in India. That's why I put them on the list. But I had never heard of them either.
Vauld.
Horrible name.
Terrible name.
Continuing the industry trend of just having a horrible name.
Yes, I guess it's a play on Vault, but maybe they wanted Vault, but
they were a crypto exchange and lender, and they froze withdrawals. And as with all these cases, they're telling everybody all will be fine. Do not worry. But that is probably not the case, and they are probably facing insolvency.
Yeah, so
they were also offering a ton of percentage yield bullshit garbage.
They really buried the lead here on July 4th, dropping this corporate statement. Just kidding. It's India. I don't think they celebrate the 4th of July there. The Vauld management team wishes to inform that we are facing financial challenges despite our best efforts. This is due to a combination of circumstances such as a volatile market conditions, the financial difficulties of our key business partners, inevitably affecting us. So that maybe they got maybe 3 hours was going to Indian exchanges for capital too. So financial difficulties of our key business partners inevitably affecting us in the current market climate, which has led to a significant amount of customer withdrawals in excess of $197.7 million since June 12th.
This is a really long-winded way of saying we lost all your money.
Yeah, but I think that one sentence there, the current market climate, excuse me, the one before that, the financial difficulties of our key business partners inevitably affecting us. So
What's so special about that fucking line?
I mean, it just shows like the contagion. 3 hours. They mentioned 3 hours capital too. 3 hours capital
Did they
defaulted
say
on
3 hours specifically?
Yeah, and Celsius and Terra. So they were exposed to Terra, Celsius, and 3 hours.
And 3 hours was exposed to probably Terra and Celsius as well.
Yeah.
Or at least,
Oh,
or
wait,
at least,
never mind.
or 3 hours was exposed to Terra and Celsius was exposed to 3 arrows and Terra.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that might just be an explanation for why the market fell. I don't know if they had exposure.
They're just saying just general market issues. Like I said, really long-winded way of saying we lost all your fucking money.
Yeah, it's gone. Counterparty risk freaks. It's more significant than you think. And I mean, don't want to sound cliche, gradually than suddenly, but the suddenly part is here. It's happening to us now. If you're Voyager or Celsius, any of these, Vauld over the last week.
I thought the suddenly was like 4 months ago.
With Terra?
No, I don't. You remember we were having an argument about the end of. I was on the end of the gradually phase, and we were already at suddenly.
Yeah, but that was for hyperinflation.
Check the tapes. Yeah, that was for hyperinflation.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, we're somewhere in that area.
We should release the full RHR archives on limited edition cassettes, so that freaks can actually check the tapes.
Yeah.
I haven't used a cassette player in a long fucking time.
Yeah. Here's some breaking news. Let's get this thread up here, Car. Looks like Marathon. This actually ties into another topic we have on the list, so it's good to bring it up. We can transition away from this contagion event and all these defaults in the centralized finance market.
Marathon just announced that they were moving their hash from a bunch of their hash from New York to. Was that Marathon? No, that was Riot. Riot, so they were moving from New York to Texas.
I don't think Riot had material amount of hash rate in New York. It's probably like CoinMint's up in New York.
No, it was not.
Greenwich.
It was like a Riot or a Marathon or something. It wasn't Greenwich.
I don't know.
I think it was
Marathon.
Riot.
Might have been right. But Marathon go down, not the street car, but in Texas. So it seems like Marathon just dropped some financials from June, literally minutes ago. And in this tweet thread, they were supposed to have a hosting facility up and running in Texas in June, which is being maintained by Compute North. But it seems like they're running into problems in regards to their tax status, and they're not able to get that up. So it's probably a material amount of hash rate that's remaining on the sidelines. But this is a very interesting theme. Obviously, Texas mining specifically has been a big theme in the Bitcoin mining industry throughout the last year, really. And the Chinese mining exodus started almost exactly a year ago. Texas is claiming to be, and probably is right now, the mining capital of the world in terms of the amount of hash rate that is within Texas's borders. But I don't know. As a Texan, people are shilling demand response, ERCOT, wind and solar in West Texas, all this stuff. But I don't know. I do have a bit of apprehension about the Texas mining industry, particularly on-grid operations, because I think the way these power purchase agreements, particularly with ERCOT, are developing, I think a lot of these power purchase agreements aren't as good as people initially thought, and ERCOT is getting greedy and reworking contracts moving forward from what I'm hearing. And then on top of that, obviously with the great migration from the Northeast and California to states like Florida and Texas has created an increased demand for electricity on their grids, and it doesn't seem like the state is able to get enough capacity up and running. There's worries of brownouts and blackouts this summer as the heat stays above like 105 degrees for a very long sustained period of time. And then Governor Abbott came out, I believe earlier today or a couple days ago, and essentially said that they're going to ask the refineries, so the oil and gas refineries, the state's going to ask them to derate their operations and basically tell them to cut back production to relieve stress on the grid, which is very interesting to see. That Texas, supposed to be the energy capital of the world, is having significant grid problems still, more than a year and a half after the big freeze out and blackout in February of last year. But yeah, it seems like Marathon's having problems spin up there.
To bring it back to Marathon specifically, haven't you said in the past that you had concerns over Mara's ability to execute and actually get miners online?
Yeah, but I mean they've got this partnership with Compute North, which has proven to be able to get some stuff up.
So they basically really just bring in Compute North as like a middleman to handle it?
Yeah, they contract out all their operations at Compute North. But again, like so, with that announcement and that tweet thread that we just showed from Marathon, I think this is more of like a regulatory thing that they're running into. They're running into some like Better Business Bureau bullshit that's preventing them from getting up and running.
The Better Business Bureau isn't involved in this shit.
I know, it's a saying. Yeah.
That's like a consumer protection agency.
Yeah, but it's do you ever watch Eastbound and Down? Ashley Schaefer.
Yeah. Good show.
The Kia is a far superior vehicle. I had to sell my BMW dealership due to allegations of prostitution, semi-automatic weapons with trace levels of cocaine dust. You know, some Better Business Bureau bullshit. That's where that comes from.
There you go.
Allegations. Build Better Business Bureau back better. This is true Narwhal talk is. Yeah, Texas. It'll be interesting to see. There's again.
That's a great name, by the way, Narwhal.
Yeah. The Texas grid is stressed out right now. Governor Abbott is potentially going to ask refineries, oil and gas refineries, to turn down their operations to decrease the stress on the grid. And not only will that affect the Texas grid, but when you take the current market conditions for oil and gas into consideration, because it exacerbates a problem there where you have the main hub of where oil and gas is refined here in the United States essentially shutting down for an extended period of time to save the Texas grid. That could lead to some exacerbation on the prices of crude oil and natural gas, which have had they were coming down earlier this week, fell below $100 yesterday. I believe they pumped a bit today, back up to like 103, 104. But this would be terrible timing for anybody who's wishing for lower gas prices if the state of Texas has to shut down their refineries to save their grid, and that will create another supply problem for the oil and gas industry.
Yeah, I mean, if you're expecting lower gas prices, lower energy prices in general, don't. It's a bad expectation. Don't expect that. If it does happen, be happy about it, but expect them to continue to go up significantly, I would say.
Yeah.
Operate under that assumption. It's the safe assumption to operate under.
Yeah. It's a good assumption to run with. Back to Bitcoin. You have Pete Rizzo's article on Bitcoin maximalism in here. I read it, shared it.
I just love that this guy, like, I've developed a very strong friendship with Rizzo over the last 2 years. And we disagreed on everything if you go back 4 or 5 years ago when he was the editor at CoinDesk. It's just a pretty amazing turnaround. He's a fantastic writer. I think he did a really great job with this piece. I think he exemplified. I've never personally identified as a Bitcoin maximalist, but I think he exemplifies in this piece my point of view and perspective on all of this, very clearly and concisely and eloquently. And there's an additional little nugget of fun here. So CoinDesk came out with like an anti-maximalism piece written by their current editor, and Rizzo replied under their tweet with this piece and was ratioing them, so they hit his reply.
They did?
Yeah, they hit his fucking reply.
Yeah.
How weak is that? That is weak as fuck.
CoinDesk, baby. The WEF-backed CoinDesk, or the WEF-affiliated CoinDesk.
They're partnered.
They are partners. And no, I mean, if you guys haven't been reading Pete's historical pieces on Bitcoin, highly recommend you go do that. He's falling down a Mircea Popescu rabbit hole.
Who, Rizzo?
Yeah, we've had a lot of discussions about Mircea in the past, which is
he's still alive.
I mean, we've discussed it on this podcast. As somebody who surfed in Playa Hermosa and Jaco, apparently where he died, like I just don't believe it. Like anybody's ever been in that ocean.
Well, it's one of the most deadliest areas, right?
It's a gnarly shore break. It's like crocodile infested waters. Like it's not really known for just people free swimming. It's mostly just surfers. And the shore break
that's why it's an ideal place to fake your death.
Yeah, but I mean,
I'm pretty sure he faked his death.
I'm pretty sure too. And if he did, we probably shouldn't be talking about it because he's.
Look, I literally tweeted out that someone came and took the rabbit hole recap lightning node and then switched it to Tor only and promised to keep all fees low, and like half the people believed it. So it's like it doesn't really matter what I say on here. Everyone's still going to believe he's dead anyway. So pretty sure he's not.
Yeah. Well, anyway, this goes back to Pete Rizzo.
If you're listening, Mircea, I'm sorry for blowing up your spot, but kudos on the effective fake death.
Please don't put a hit out of us. No, Pete's been doing great work, and I gotta harken back to.
I lost my body in a swimming accident.
We gotta harken back to the episode we recorded when it was me, Pete, CK, and Dylan LeClaire. I think Bitcoin was still like in the $40,000, $45,000 range, and Pete was calling for a long, cold, dark winter. It seems like.
Well, I told you what he said to me, right? The day we went down like 30%.
What'd he say?
He's like, "Will you tell me I'm right now?" Like I woke up in the morning to a message from him. He's like, "I want to hear it from you." What?
Did you tell him he was right? Did you tell him he was right?
Nah. No, I gave him a bone on that one, but the hard part about timing markets isn't necessarily you can be directionally correct. The hard part is actually then buying back in. It's hard enough to sell the top. It's even harder to then buy back in before getting into complete derangement syndrome. And I'm not saying like that's what's going to happen in this case, because I'm not going to talk about Rizzo's personal finances on air. But that's why just consistently stacking is the most foolproof way, because you don't have to time tops and you don't have to time bottoms. The combination of the two is where people get wrecked. There was that fund that came out. They lost everything on the Terra collapse because they shorted Terra, but on one of the bounces they got liquidated. So they were correct. they were fucking correct in their thesis, but they played with fire and they got wrecked. Our boy Murad was pretty spot on in terms of his bull thesis, but he got wrecked in that one March 2020 drop down, right? And that's what happens when you trade. When you trade, all it takes is one or two really bad mistakes, and then next thing you know, you've lost all your fucking money. But if you stack, you skip that process. You can just live your fucking life, and you don't have to be staring in front of a computer and hoping you don't lose everything in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, Rizzo completely nailed the bear market call. He went on the pod with you and completely called it. That's what you were talking about? Yeah. Well, he was privately calling it to me before then. I was calling him a bear for a while.
Yeah,
he got me on that one. I will give him that. He got me on that one.
He said he said it felt like when he came on and recorded, it felt like fall. You could feel the cold winter winds beginning to breeze. Beginning to blow. Yeah, no, but go read his piece. It's a good piece.
It's a great piece. He did a really good job with it.
In response to Nick Carter's piece from last week, claiming that Bitcoin maximalism is dead. And I fucking hate the term Bitcoin maximalism. I mean,
that's why I never identify as a maximalist, because it's a derogatory straw man created by shitcoiners.
Yeah. Yeah, and I always I hate that I even have to say it. Like, people are like, oh, like when you talk to a normie or somebody who doesn't know who you are and is interested in Bitcoin and crypto, you have to explain it. I'm like, yeah, I'm Bitcoin only. Some people would. That's how I always preface it.
I just say I focus on Bitcoin. I say my focus is on Bitcoin. Everything else is noise. Like the original insinuation of Bitcoin maximalism as a term was that the only reason we thought Ethereum wouldn't work, and that Ethereum had misleading marketing, and that Ethereum was basically bringing sheep to the slaughter, was that it was not Bitcoin. That's the key straw man argument of the whole thing. No, it's not because it's not Bitcoin. It's because it's a piece of fucking shit.
Yeah, I'm looking for the because didn't he define it in Bitcoin Magazine too? I'm looking for the Bitcoin Magazine piece.
Well, Vitalik or Rizzo?
Vitalik was the original owner of Bitcoin Magazine.
No, he was the founder. He was the founder of Bitcoin Magazine. Yes. Before he launched his Ethereum project, he was one of the most prolific Bitcoin journalists. Which lines up with that previous statement, by the way, that it's hard. It's hard to be a public figure in Bitcoin and not end up either completely losing your mind or letting ego get the best of you, or a combination of the two. But the Bitcoin maximalism post was on his personal blog, if I recall correctly.
His personal blog.
No, like Ty confirmed as well.
Yeah.
He actually has some really great early pieces on Bitcoin Magazine about Bitcoin back in his heyday.
Yeah, he was a really good technical writer. It was a weird crew at Bitcoin Magazine in the early days. It was Vitalik Buterin and Andrew DeSantis.
I don't know. Oh, sorry.
The name
what happened to Andrew DeSantis?
I think
I haven't heard that name in a minute.
Yeah.
There's the reason I accidentally cut you off there was just because Carlos had this hilarious, I don't even know what he's talking about, the specific reply, but he goes, Matt's reply to Vitalik's reply to Jimmy's tweet was great, and that old thread perfect. No idea what he's talking about. But I just thought it was a great comment. Cheers to you.
Cheers to all you freaks in the live chat right now.
I love our live chat, Ride or Die freaks.
Yeah. Then all right, well, since we only had one shout out, it was a short one. We'll get to last week's boost too. We had a good number of boosts, high number.
Did you see the drama I caused in the podcasting 2.0 world?
Yeah, dude, you had too many splits, bro. Too many splits.
I added for Citadel Dispatch. I added splits for 6 different community funded Bitcoin projects, so they all get funded at the same time that the Sats are streaming, and basically like all the podcasting 2.0 stakeholders are like, you're breaking our apps, like you have way too many fucking splits. And I like to push the limits, so hopefully it will lead to a better podcasting 2.0 ecosystem.
I hope so. I'm loving it so far. Shout out to the team at Found. Disclaimer: I'm an investor, but again, we've been seeing a lot of good boost on TFTC. We're getting a lot here. A rabbit hole recap. We're going to read the top 4 from last week's episodes right now. I mean, I saw you got a 210,000 sat boost.
Largest one I've ever seen.
Yeah,
and that happened after I added all the splits, so it worked. So there's some studying going on there.
Yeah.
And also, before you go, huge shout out to Roy and the guys at Breeze as well, doing really great work on podcasting 2.0.
Everybody is. Shout out to Adam Carey, the podfather himself, for doing this. This is his value for value idea and model brought to the rest of us in the podcasting world. If you guys are listening via podcasting 2.0 compatible app and you're streaming us sats, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. We love that you guys are getting value out of this show and then giving it back to us in the form of boost and streaming sats. Here are the top 4 from last week. Number 1 on the list, at BTC Nim, 51,111 sats. Good seeing the freaks sending real, quote unquote, real boost amounts. I just learned that you got to boost the episode and not the show in Fountain app. I boosted the show and assumed I was being censored, but Marty would never do that. I'd never do that, BTC Nim. Marty, please run this through a Latin translator. Marty, please run this through a Latin translator so you and the dozens of people in the world who speak Latin I have it on my phone right now. I don't feel like
Latin's Marty, a dead language in Bitcoin.
Marty, can a fellow pleb treat you to a drink in Avalon? Yes, you can take me to the P, pleb.
Wait, was that a boostergram and
no,
comment?
That's in the comments. That's just in the comments. Oh. Second boostergram of the week, of last week, from at Gunsun, 50,002 sats. See, this is a trend here I've noticed last week.
If it's the top, if you do the top 4, it turns into like Price is Right shit.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
You don't want to do a whole number. You always want to. You don't want to do a round number. You always want to add a couple digits.
Gunsun, incredible British accent, Marty. I can finally stop listening to Peter's show. RHR has it all. It's true, mate. Sorry, Peter. At Time Train Strategy, 50,001 sat.
I love it. He got outbid by another guy by 1 sat.
Love the show with super high signal in a world of increasing noise. Keep up the good work. And last but not least, from at JT, a cool even 50,000 sats. Hot take, the bottom is in. Agree that more pain is on the way, but think it's coming for those that did not stay humble and stack sats.
Cheers to all you freaks for supporting the show. As always, you can view all the boostograms on podcasting 2.0 apps, besides just the ones we highlight, which is one of the coolest features. You can reply to them. It's basically an open comment system that has value attached to it in the form of sats. I do want to say that last guy, he almost got kicked out of the top 4 by like 2 sats. So cheers to you.
Cheers to you. And I agree. Thank you. I love that you view the show as signal throughout the noise.
Yeah, we could do a little bit better on that. We've gotten a little bit noisier.
What do you mean?
With our age. If you go back to the old RHRs, man, I was getting nostalgic. I went back to the tapes. I put them all on cassettes, and I was just listening to them in my cassette tape player. Dude, we were so high signal. It was just like 45 minutes, an hour, boom, super high signal. And our age has just got into us.
Well, let's get a high signal topic here. We mentioned it in the beginning of the episode. Tapsigner plus Nunchuck. Again, I think when it comes to improving the UX around Bitcoin usage, I'm really excited to see how the design landscape expands with NFC, particularly. We've had Rodolfo on the show to talk about Tapsigner, which is a new product they have, which essentially is an NFC-enabled card that allows you to sign in a multi-sig quorum, or you can probably do single sig too if you want to, but it's probably not ideal. And Rodolfo last night actually, less than 24 hours ago, released a demo video of him using the Tapsigner in conjunction with Nunchuck's mobile app, which Hugo Hanoi has built with his team to.
Is that NBK?
Yeah, I think so. Might not be.
Doesn't look like his hands.
Have never really paid attention to Rodolfo's hands, but I'll take your word for it. He posted on his Twitter account, but no, I mean, again, this is just really cool in my mind. Combining two devices here, NFC-enabled card and a mobile phone. I think this is going to be really cool to see develop moving forward. Is how people get creative with these types of multi-sig quorums.
And the key here is that because it's a card, it doesn't have a screen on it. It's super fucking cheap. You can use it with your already existing mobile phone. The main trade-off is it doesn't have a screen on it, so you cannot confirm the information on the device as you can with a lot of the other hardware that is more expensive. Multi-sig mitigates that to a degree because it could be just one key in a multi-key multi-sig. Yeah, and obviously it's just strictly better than using just a mobile phone, right? So you can get one of these for really cheap, and improve the security of your mobile wallet.
Hell yeah!
So it'd be great to see more wallets. I know a bunch of wallets are working on, kind of building out a standard here for NFC, and it'd be nice to see that on the sooner end, and particularly cross compatibility would be fantastic rather than like a bunch of different implementations.
Yes. Yeah, we've got a couple of standards that are being worked on right now.
Also, I'm glad that Peter and NVK's hardware and security skills are better than their spelling, because he said that card is singing to his phone rather than signing.
Hey, English is his second language. He was born and raised in Brazil. Can you cut the man some slack? Can you write that in Portuguese for us?
Maybe he should just tweet in Portuguese then, and we'll see. I'm pretty sure 90% of MVK's tweets have a typo in them. So
he's a native Portuguese speaker.
Just tweet it in Portuguese, and we'll just press the translate tweet button.
On to more Signal here. Hi,
Archiving
Signal.
Clown World, you're asking how you can boost the live show on Fountain or Podcasting 2.0 apps. You can't. We post it to the podcast feeds afterwards, and then after we do that, you can go into the Podcasting 2.0 apps and boost from there, which particularly is the way I really like using Podcasting 2.0, because I either like watching shows on video or through a non-Podcasting 2.0 app, and then I just open the app, load it up with some sats, and send a boost when I want to support people.
It's the way to do it, freaks. But I think this is part of the reason why we've lost some of the signals, because you get so goddamn distracted by the group chat that
the group chat is the best thing that ever happened to this show, and I will not apologize. And also, I want to say just a quick disclosure, quick warning and reminder that Fountain app is using a custodial wallet. It's lnpay.co's wallet, so it's a custodial wallet that they don't have control over, but a third party does. So you do have what? Sweep. You do have custodial risk when you're using Fountain, and it's also it is a closed source wallet, so you can't verify the code. I know the team at Fountain have plans in place to try and improve a lot of the trade-offs that are being taken. Breeze is non-custodial, but as a result, it's a little bit heavy in terms of processing on your phone. But both teams are working through trying to make this UX better and better, and the trade-offs better and better. And it is still very new, and it's just cool to see. It's just cool to see this ecosystem starting to really grow and gain some traction.
Yeah, I mean, so I use the Fountain wallet for RHR, which is just really cool to see. But I also, and I have TFTC, US Citadel Dispatch for those podcasts. When we're receiving sats, they're going straight to nodes that we control, right? And
yeah, same with me for RHR. It just goes to my own node.
yeah.
So yeah, when I on the receiving side, I'm not custodial.
No.
But when you're using Fountain as a sender, it's custodial. When you're using Breeze as a sender, it's not custodial.
Yes.
So be aware. But I will say, like, you know, if you're using Fountain as a sender, like you're putting sats in there to send it to someone else. So, you know, it's those sats are, and because of Lightning, you can just fund it, send, boom. So the trade-off isn't as bad, in my opinion, as other custodial wallet solutions. And then if you're earning sats through Fountain, you just withdraw them as quick as possible.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, and the point I was trying to get to too is like for TFTC, and you for Citadel Dispatch and RHR, like you're receiving the sats directly to a wallet you control directly from the listeners of the show, which
cool.
is extremely cool. Like again, the censorship resistant nature of Bitcoin and Lightning Network, when you actually run your own hardware, run your own node, and control it, like that is, I mean, again, you think, I go back to the clip of Mark Andreessen from a couple weeks ago when he was trying to describe how podcasters can monetize in Web3 via NFTs, and it just simply doesn't make any sense to even try to go do something like that when podcasting 2.0 already exists. Like that vision of like Web3, I hate the meme, but the intention behind it is like a giving the ability of individuals and creators to monetize themselves directly from their audience without any middlemen. And you don't need an NFT, you don't need a middleman token outside of sats for that. Like what Adam and team Podcast 2.0 have built is it's just taking, and that's the thing, it's taking two different open source technologies in the RSS feed and Bitcoin Lightning Network stack and combining them to create this direct funding mechanism. You don't need a token for it.
First of all, I'm hearing rumors that AntennaPod is considering integrating Podcasting 2.0, which would be awesome to see. AntennaPod is my favorite podcasting app. It's fully open source. You know, one of the interesting things about Podcasting 2.0 is it gives an open source project like AntennaPod, all of a sudden they have an ethical monetization scheme too, because they can get 1% of the stream as sats are happening. So it gives an incentive to the actual podcast app makers to have a reliable revenue stream that is ethically sound, that's not based on data surveillance. And the second thing is, I've always been a fan of audience funded models. They've existed in the past already, but every single one of them has relied on extremely trusted third parties, Patreon, you know, PayPal, all these different, you know, GoFundMe, Substack, massive trusted third parties. Now, Podcasting 2.0 is obviously not completely there yet in terms of actually the way users use it, but it's a massive step in the right direction, and it is getting better every day. So fantastic to see, and cheers to everyone who's working on it, and all the freaks who are actively engaged in it and playing with it and supporting us.
Yeah. No, it's going to be crazy when we look back on it, because I think Podcasting 2.0 is going to be massive. Again, since I'm an investor in Fountain, I get updates on like the performance of their app and stuff like that. And the most recent one, even with the ad model, so like we both agree that the ad model is a bit, is not a bit, but it is corrupting content and media distribution on a broader scale, even though we do attempt to be very selective with our advertisers, have fucked up with that in the past, but we do really want to align with people that we align with philosophically and ideologically and trust their products. But what's interesting with Fountain, what they turned on recently was this pay to or earn by listening. So like freaks who are listening, some of you freaks who are listening to this episode probably getting stream sats right now if you're listening on the Fountain app. And then the other thing that really changes the ad model is the pay to listen to the ads, where the advertiser puts a portion of their spend on the Fountain app and says, hey, we're going to pay your users to listen to this app, or this ad, excuse me, which is, I think it's interesting. What do you think of that model where somebody's listening to an ad?
That doesn't make sense to me. I think that's like stopgap bullshit. That to me, that feels fiat-y.
Why do you say that?
Because just fuck ads and just go straight audience funding and boom, done. Like the ad model is a dying model in my opinion. Incentives are better aligned audience funded wise, and it just seems like it seems like a click farm type of situation, right? It's like, are you even like, what is the advertiser getting out of that? They're getting out of someone listening, but like the person just listening to get the extra sats. It's to me that seems like Rube Goldberg bullshit, shitcoin bullshit, fiat bullshit.
I don't know. Having an ad sales background,
uncensored opinions.
I mean, has there ever been an ad that you liked that pushed you to buy something that's brought value to your life? No.
Ads are based. No.
Period.
Okay. No.
All right.
The current ad landscape is mostly focused on data surveillance. There's mostly focused on data monetization. Is mostly focused on trying to shape your opinions and change your decision-making skills. It's mostly a malicious industry, and the incentives are broken because, like, when we talk about the issue, like corporate media is the perfect example because it's at the extreme, right? And if you talk about like why CNN does what they do or why Fox does what they do, why does MSNBC do what they do? It's because of where they make their fucking money. And that's their big major corporate ad deals. And that's the crux of, I think Adam Curry would agree with me on this. I think, I mean, he always says that at the core, advertising leads to censorship. I think we are personally really good about still being critical of anyone who sponsors a Rabbit Hole Recap. But most people aren't. Most people will blindly follow that ad money. And then just one other thing. I just want to be perfectly clear here. Marty is a personal investor of Fountain. Yes. I am not an investor of Fountain.
Yes. I thought we've been clear about that throughout this time.
I know it just gets a little confusing because we do have a venture fund that invests in companies.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make it clear because you said it like 3 times.
Yeah. Shout out to Slush Pool. They mined back-to-back blocks while we've been recording here. It's good to see. Stacking sats while we're recording feels good. Streaming sats, mining sats, multiple sat streams, freaks. It's addicting. But moving through the list, again, shout out to anybody contributing via Podcasting 2.0. It is the future. And what I was going to say is it will be really cool to look back a decade from now. Podcasting 2.0 is completely normalized and is the standard. And we'll be able to say, I think we were like one of like the first 10 podcasts on Podcasting 2.0, like actually getting sats, maybe top 5, like first 5, like actually receiving sats via Podcasting 2.0.
It'll just be called podcasting at that point.
Yeah.
We'll just drop 2.0.
Yeah. It would, that's really going to be cool to look back on when it becomes a standard.
There's going to be a lot of things, like talking about like, malicious people in this space deleting tweets and shit. One of my favorite parts of the show is just like week in, week out, just our unadulterated opinions that are out there forever. Like Did 2.5 years ago, like, do I agree with everything that I thought 2.5 years ago? No, there's a lot of things that I've probably learned lessons from and improved on, but that whole history is there. That whole timeline is there. It's this massive time capsule, right? Where we'll just be able to look back and just like pick a week and see like what the fuck was going on that week and where was our heads at. And then now that we have the live chat, which is so fucking awesome, we'll also see where the freaks' heads were at the same time. It's just a really cool. It's so amazing to think about. Even now, just 3 years, looking back is pretty fucking cool. But if you start adding years to that, it gets pretty.
We're coming up to 4 years,
heady.
brother.
Yeah,
it'll be 4 years next month.
It's pretty crazy.
No, and then like once you start having kids, then you start thinking, oh shit, like my kids are gonna go listen to this stuff at some point. Like,
well, like I said in the past, Marty, at least you're not doing porn.
Yes,
we know you really love porn. So there was a trajectory where Marty was like, what would Marty's porn name be?
I don't have a dick for porn. We can't have it ever. You would not want to see me in a porno. You should have watched Porn Freaks. It rots your mind. It takes your soul. It lowers your T. Stay away. Stop fapping. Retain. I've been on a big retention plan. We're opening up here now. I highly recommend you freaks join.
Fucking got him on the tangent.
It energizes you. Semen retention. Ties on the semen retention game. Highly recommend it. Stop fapping. Stop fapping. Start holding it.
Nick Ranchero. That'd be Marty's porn name.
Tandra Cox. This is true. Our hand up too. Again, we're opening up here. I have had some ball sunning sessions. It's not a joke. I think it does energize you as well. All right, enough about porno and sunning your balls and retention. I recommend not watching porno, sunning your balls, and
Marty's porn name would also be Uncle Marty. Narwhal Taco. That great comment.
All right, let's get back to the list. Software update. We only have one. What's up with the bear market? I thought building was going on in the bear market.
Dude, software updates are hard to keep track of, man.
Aren't you doing the review podcast with Rodolfo now? Was that just like a one-off thing?
He just asked me to be a guest for the first one. He hasn't asked me to be a guest for the second one yet.
Okay.
But also, he got all those software updates and then asked me to be a guest.
Well, the software update that we have here today is Samourai version 0.99.99e. It adds an in-app web view that uses Tor and adds custom note function within transaction detail screen. Looking, nothing.
The big one is if you click a transaction to view in Samourai Wallet, it usually goes outside to the browser, which you might not be running Tor, you might not be running a VPN. Now it stays in-app and it goes through Tor still. So it's a nice little bump for any nice little upgrade for anybody who uses Samourai Wallet.
Yes, if you're running Samourai Wallet, want the benefits of these upgrades, of these updates, go download it. It doesn't seem like there's any critical vulnerabilities, so there's no rush to do that. If you want to wait, see people test it out themselves.
The real answer is not really laziness on the software updates. I think we hit a point there where we're putting every software update in, and like my goal here is to try and highlight the important ones, rather than just like have Marty just like read out a bunch of updates and be like, "Be aware, freaks." It's just,
ouch, ouch.
I mean, we did that for a couple months there, so
yeah.
And then he's like, "Don't rush to update if you don't have to update." It's like it just was extra lift for not much gain, I feel like.
Hell yeah.
But we're aware, and I will try and add to the list any major software updates I see. And if you see a major software update that you think should be on Rabbit Hole Recap, send it to us. through the various channels you can send it to us. Thank you.
Yes. Going through Bitcoin Optech right now. There's an updated alternative to BIP47 reusable payment codes that was released this week. So that's interesting.
There was what?
An updated alternative to BIP47 reusable payment codes. Obviously, BIP47 is what Paynims run on. Requires some interactivity in terms of using an op return message when you create your Paynim, and then if you want a readable Paynim, you need a central server to do that. It seems like a gentleman by the name of Alfred Hodler posted to the Bitcoin dev mailing list was an alternative to this. Hodler's scheme would be less likely to leak certain information, but it would increase the amount of data a client implementing the protocol would need to learn from the blockchain, making it less suitable for light clients. So I think this is something similar to what Ruben Thompson presented with
silent payments.
Yeah, silent payments. I don't think this is silent payments. I think it's a ongoing conversation around that. Seems like splices are coming to Lightning Network as well. This is something like D++ and others have been working on. We're pretty excited about splicing on the Lightning Network. So it seems like that's moving forward.
Were you reading from Optech?
Yeah.
Okay, next on the list.
Next on the list is Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is...
So this was not specifically Bitcoin focused, but I thought it was really interesting. Zimbabwe has a shit ton of inflation. They had a failed currency that they got rid of and then switched to dollars. And then in 2019, they switched back to a new currency that is now failing as well. So a lot of people in Zimbabwe are using US dollars. Zimbabwe is introducing gold coins, like official gold coins out of Zimbabwe's government or whatever, that you can easily trade for local currency or US dollars. So this is basically the Bitcoin thesis, just with gold. And it's playing out in Zimbabwe right now.
Yeah, transition back to a sound money standard using gold. So they're calling the gold coin the Musi Otonya coin, named after Victoria Falls. It'll be 1 troy ounce of gold. Will contain 1 troy ounce of gold. And yeah, so it seems like Zimbabwe is reverting to sound money, or I don't even know if they were ever on a sound money standard. Seems like they're getting to it now, though.
One of my favorite parts of you, Marty, one of my favorite things about you, Marty, is that you always attempt to pronounce the things that you never have a chance of pronouncing correctly, but you still try and do it. I just ignore them and don't say the word. But what's the name of the gold coin?
Let me look it up again. Pull it up here, scroll up a little bit. The Musi Otonya.
Yeah, definitely the correct pronunciation.
It might be. Hey, any Zimbabwe freaks in the chat, let me know. I'm like looking at the chat now, and I'm like looking. I don't want to put.
Well, yeah, I mean, thank you to all the freaks for the birthday wishes. I really do appreciate it.
Happy birthday, sir.
Thanks, Marty. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. This is a reminder. I mean, Cash App Owen Benjamin, who I've met before, doing incredible things at the Cash App. And he tweeted this out a couple weeks ago. And this was another thing on that podcast I was on yesterday with the gentleman who got embroiled in the Voyager fuck up. Like, a lot of people are just completely unaware of how not only like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency works, but the traditional banking system works as well. But I just wanted to send out a friendly periodic reminder that there's currently no requirement for banks and depository institutions in the United States to have any reserves. So there's the reserve ratio is 0%, and it has been since March of 2020, when the Federal Reserve did a lot of manipulating of the facilities. That one of the things they did was allow BlackRock to facilitate a lot of its corporate bond buying facilities. It also reduced the reserve ratio requirement from 10% to 0%. And that was supposed to be temporary. We're sitting here in July of 2022, more than 2 years later, and that reserve ratio, even in an environment of quantitative tightening and rate raising, is still zero. So just have to remind the freaks and anybody listening out there that the dollar system is just a complete Ponzi. There's literally nothing backing it. There is no reserves necessary or required in any of the banks that you're using.
Yep. 99% of people are unaware about most things, but including that.
Yes. And
we have Lumia Marks in the comments saying bail-ins. I've been expecting bail-ins for whatever the next collapse is. We'll see if that plays out. I'm not as positive now. Maybe they'll just print money and bail out. But
well, if you're worried about a bail-in, this is a great reason to stack sats and sweep them to addresses that you control with private keys. Get your bank account as close to zero as possible. Keep only as much cash as you actually need in your bank account, and everything else in sats that you control. And the effects of a bail-in will be significantly reduced for yourself. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there's bail-ins. Like, I think I've been doing a lot of macro reading today, and it's crazy what's going on out there when you consider like the housing market. Like, if you look at PPI, so like the producer pricing index here in the United States across all sectors in the month of May was up either between like 15 and like 33%. So when it comes like energy, food, raw materials, and this is like PPI, not CPI. So this is producer price index, which is a leading indicator of future inflation. And that is hitting breakaway speed within the last few months. And so that signals that inflation is only going to continue to increase, because as the overall cost of the people producing the finished goods in the economy goes up, that gets passed on via those finished goods. But that has a bit of a lag to when the producer price goes up. So the charts I read in this Zero Hedge, or was looking at in the Zero Hedge article today, are actually like stunning. Just like how much hockey stick growth in the PPI inflation index has happened in the first 6 months of this year. Then you factor that in with the rise in interest rates, particularly on mortgages. It seems like a lot of people out there had adjustable mortgages, and that rate has gone from
adjustable car loans too.
Yeah, between January and May of this year, the average rate went from 2.5% to 6.3%, 36%, I believe. And so if you had a mortgage out,
it went from what percent to what percent?
2.5 to 6.36.
Brutal.
Yeah. And so if you had a mortgage out on a house worth $350,000, your monthly mortgage payment went from something like $1,300 to $2,100, which, when you consider the fact that your average American can't afford an emergency $400 expense without going into debt, a $600 to $700 jump. $700 jump in your monthly mortgage payment is something that a lot of people probably can't stomach. And so when you take that into consideration, with the rising costs in food and energy as well, like, it seems pretty glaringly obvious that we're going to be rolling into recession here again to prop up the liberal world order. But yeah, I mean, we discussed it last week. Like, if an idiot like me could predict this type of stuff in April of 2020, it is astonishing that the powers that be weren't able to see this, or portray that they weren't able to see this. And right now, everybody's like, "Oh, maybe we'll get a recession, maybe we won't." But like, I think it's becoming very apparent that we're probably already in a recession, and what we should really be discussing is whether or not we're going to get a depression globally.
Mandibles.
Yeah.
So the key difference between a bail-in and bailout is a bailout is socialized, basically through inflation. Government money bails out banks. Everyone, basically takes a hit through inflation tax. Bail-ins are on bank-specific, case-by-case basis that affects depositors proportionally within a bank. If we do see bail-ins, I will say the positive lining of that is with bailouts, people tend to not really learn their lesson. They took a certain type of risk using a specific bank. They got bailed out. Losses were socialized. With bail-ins, people will truly learn what custodial risk is. They will have touched the stove, and they will seek out money that they can truly own themselves and control themselves. So there's a silver lining there.
Yeah. It's a very visible and tangible lesson. You wake up one day and they just decided to take 20% of what I had in my bank account.
Basically, what we're seeing with the different crypto companies is basically equivalent to bail-ins.
Yeah, but it's like the cryptocurrencies like lost the money. I think it's different. Like,
I mean, the bank loses the money too in a bail-in situation.
Yeah, and so why may we need to go to a bail-in situation? And are we getting close to that? I think that's a big theme in the markets this week and over the last few weeks is the stress levels in the corporate debt markets. Obviously, we've talked about that iShares high yield corporate bond index over the last couple of months. That still hasn't hit like free fall on the chart yet, but it is still going down pretty steadily. It's not a slope you would want to ski down, and it seems like if it does break like it has in 2008 and again in 2020, that it could potentially break lower than where it reached in 2008. But if you look at the credit default swap for Citigroup, so if you talk about bail-ins and in the banking sector, specifically, Citi is one of the biggest banks in the world, and the credit default swaps on Citi are increasing pretty significantly, approaching 08 levels. And so a credit default swap is essentially an insurance policy on a product's failure, in this case Citigroup. So to see the cost of the insurance policy on Citi's failure increasing basically leads the markets to believe that many people think Citi's going to fail at some point soon, which could be this is Credit Suisse, excuse me, not Citibank. Okay, sorry for any freaks working at Citi. Credit Suisse, which is another one of the largest banks.
Which is a different bank.
Yes, a different bank from a different country. But Credit Suisse, excuse me, their CDSs have increased significantly. So when it comes to corporate debt, it seems like some in the banking sector are under some duress, and it's getting frothy out there. We've had a couple of good days in the market. I mean, NASDAQ was screaming today. Bitcoin was screaming today. I wouldn't be surprised if these are dead cat bounces.
So, I mean, you did skip one thing on the list that I just noticed. Bitcoin Policy Institute, they submitted there was a request by the Department of Commerce for more information about basically the U.S. Competitiveness in the global market in terms of, they said, for digital assets. One thing to note from this report that I really like to see is it seems like BPI took their gloves off a bit, and it's like no more Mr. Nice Guy in terms of proof of stake networks. And so a lot of the stakeholders of different shitcoin networks will actively go to governments, including our own, and basically lobby against Bitcoin and proof of work, while stating that we're all in this together and that Bitcoiners are toxic. So in this report by BPI, they legit just straight up, they were like, they attacked those networks, and they said that they hold nothing on Bitcoin, and they talked about the differences between Bitcoin and these other chains.
Yes, I noticed that as well. Props for doing that regard, but also need to call them out where I think they're setting Bitcoin mining up for failure, which is this narrative that Bitcoin's going to usher in this renewable revolution, which I just don't think is true. I think Bitcoin miners are certainly taking advantage of renewable energy, but it's because that energy is typically stranded and heavily subsidized by the government. And I think maybe it does incentivize the increased production of these quote unquote renewables. Like, again, I don't think we should be using the term renewable. These things aren't really renewables.
Did they talk about that in this report?
Yeah, you can search Control F, renewable, green. We have argued elsewhere at length that Bitcoin could prove instrumental in accelerating renewable energy production, stabilizing our new, greener grid, and curbing methane emissions while providing creative alternatives to fossil fuel-powered heating system. Accelerating renewables. I just worry because there's a very, very a material chance, a possibility that we wake up in 5 years and find that the amount of Bitcoin mining that's being done via natural gas and coal is going to be higher than what it is today in the United States. And that's just this whole narrative, like, don't worry, Bitcoin's going to use renewables predominantly, and will help transition to all of this. Number one, I don't think it's smart to transition grid systems to quote unquote renewables and to green your grids. That makes them less reliable. And then number two, like, I just don't think, in the context of Bitcoin mining, specifically when it comes to fuel sources, I don't think that we're going to see I think there's going to be more natural gas and more coal miners here in the United States in 5 years, within the next year and the next decade. And so I really don't like this messaging and this narrative, especially for people speaking directly with politicians of Washington, D.C., that are saying, hey, don't worry, Bitcoin mining is just going to be renewable, because I think what they're setting the industry up for at some point in the future is these politicians appoint at all the miners leveraging coal and natural gas and saying, hey, you told us this was going to be renewable. Like, you lied to us. And then that just creates a whole narrative headache in the future.
Well, I mean, I think what everyone here can agree on is that Bitcoin incentivizes the use and development of the cheapest, most efficient energy sources. And the disagreement basically lies in what will be the cheapest and most efficient sources, right?
Yes. I mean, without subsidies. And that's the thing with wind and solar, too. Again, you can never... I mean, it's just a goddamn fact. The sun only... Unless you're in Norway or something, the sun is only up for 12 hours out of the day.
Well, in Norway for a bunch of months, there's no sun, but in the other months, there's 24 hours of sun.
Yeah, it can never, like, this whole levelized cost of energy metric that a lot of people lean in too is a completely bunk metric because it really doesn't highlight the overall cost that somebody would incur if they actually wanted to use electricity 24/7, 365. The LCOE basically produces a cost when the energy is being produced. When it's not being produced, the cost of finding an alternative source that would allow you to produce electricity and use it when wind and solar is not factored into that LCOE metric. And so a lot of people look at the levelized cost of energy and point to that in the wind and solar industry and say, oh, it's cheapest on an LCOE basis. But again, that hides the costs that are incurred when that electricity isn't being provided because wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining, and an individual's forced or a corporation's forced to go seek out alternative fuel sources that add cost to their overall operations. So said my piece on that. I mean, I'm very happy the Bitcoin Policy Institute's getting out there shooting on proof of stake in favor of proof of work. I really don't think that the Bitcoin mining industry or anybody advocating on behalf of Bitcoin on Capitol Hill should be catering to this green movement. I think the green movement has put society at large globally in an extremely precarious situation. I do not think we should be catering to the hysterics. I do not think their language makes any sense. I don't think it's indicative of the technologies they're bringing to the market. And I think trying to cater to their framing is a strategic misstep that, again, will come back to bite us in the ass in the future if we don't course correct, because I know for certain that there's going to be significantly more natural gas mining and significantly more coal mining here in the United States moving forward.
What do you think the current energy mix is?
It's a good question.
Is it still mostly hydro?
I would imagine. Most of the mega farms up in Canada, up in Scandinavia, are all using hydro.
I mean, because I know, like in China, there was a lot of hydro, right? It was like a coal hydro mix, depending on what season, right?
Yeah, you had the great hash rate migration in China year in and year out when wet season arose. And with that being said, it's actually a funny topic. Again, it ties perfectly into this discussion, which is the fact that the EU came out yesterday and on a whim was like, all right, nuclear and gas are now considered green. And so they're...
But there's another thing that Denver Bitcoin posted, which like biomass fuel, which is basically just burning trees, is considered renewable. So, I mean, he posted, I forget what the specific post was, but basically we're like exporting all these trees to Europe so they can meet their renewable goals. So Europe's like burning our forests in the sake of the environment.
Yeah, it's all, again, I've said it many times in the newsletter, on this show, on TFTC. This isn't about, these people don't care about the environment. They care about control. They want to control you. They can control the lower substrate of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and make you dependent on them, they being the kleptocratic power structure of despotic politicians and World Economic Forum types. They can control your fuel source, what you eat, your money via CBDCs. They can control you, and they will LARP about the environment being something that humanity needs to preserve and prevent from being destroyed, but they really don't care about the environment at the end of the day, as is indicative of them going around the world lecturing all of us about this on their private jets and yachts. It's about control at the end of the day, and it's working. They're getting a lot of control in the realm of energy. With energy shortages, people are getting desperate, and they're forming lines where the government's saying, here's something that you need that we're providing you. Now you need to do this. Go download your CBDC wallet. Obviously, we talked about it last week, but the protests in the Netherlands have continued and are only getting stronger. And they've actually spread to other countries like Italy and Poland, as farmers are standing up and saying, hey, we're not going to allow you to just indiscriminately and arbitrarily tell 30% of us that we have to shut down our operations. And so that plays into that as well. The Netherlands Environmental Agency is using the 2030 net zero goal as the excuse for just showing up to 30% of the farmers in Deutschland, or not Deutschland, it's Germany, in the Netherlands, and saying, hey, you need to shut down your operations. I know this farm has been in your family for centuries, but we need to save the planet, and you need to shut down, and you can't produce beef, and you need to go into your pod in the city, and we're going to give you some bug patties. It's happening.
Yeah, shout out to the protesters in the Netherlands.
Yeah, and I really, again, I think somebody mentioned this. I've been leaning into this phrase in the newsletter specifically, and Rodolfo used it here in this tweet too. But really, I mean, again, it comes from like Ayn Rand and Atlas Shrugged, but really highlighting the fact that a lot of the major decisions in the realm of energy, food, monetary policy, and other centrally planned areas of the global economy are being made by unproductive individuals who actually don't produce anything but words and pieces of paper. They've never built anything in their lives. In a lot of the cases, they're the unproductive class that's never toiled on the land, that's never got their hands dirty, and never actually gone through the process of planting a crop, harvesting that crop, coordinating with logistics companies and wholesalers to get that crop to market. And then these are unproductive politicians who have essentially smile fucked their way to their position, never doing a lot of hard work in their life. So we have, when society's gotten to the point where you have this unproductive lawmaking class sort of controlling everything and telling the productive class that they're stupid and they just shut down, that is when things have completely broken their ass backwards. And that is what we're seeing right now globally, particularly in the Netherlands, where the unproductive class there is arbitrarily saying 30% of farms need to shut down.
Did you see Bitcoin Q&A's tweet about if someone's going to do a Bitcoin fundraiser, not make the same mistakes as the Canadian one?
I did not see that, but yes, that is.
I will echo those sentiments, and we specifically did a dispatch on it in the aftermath that goes from start to finish. If you're trying to raise Bitcoin donations in an adversarial environment, that's episode 57. So if you are considering doing Bitcoin donations and you're connected to those protests, consider listening to that first. Please do not just like dive in naively and make a bunch of mistakes.
Go listen to that rip. Go read Bitcoin Q&A's guides. Brush up on Paynims, Samourai Wallet, CoinJoins, all that good stuff. Especially if you're going to do a Bitcoin fundraiser for the Dutch farmers. But yeah, it doesn't seem like that's getting covered in the mainstream. And like I mentioned earlier, it does seem like it is spreading a bit too.
Yeah, I mean, I see it all over Twitter, but I have no idea.
Yeah,
my Twitter feed is predisposed to show me those types of things. So
same.
I wouldn't know, but it would not surprise me if corporate media is not covering it. Incentives.
And speaking of corporate media, here's one rare glimpse of them covering something that usually people don't really like to talk about, which is cloud seeding. Australia has gone through a lot of droughts. They're having pretty epic droughts right now. I'm pretty sure this clip is from a few years ago. Or not droughts, they're having massive flooding, the opposite of droughts. I'm pretty sure this clip's from a few years ago, but what it does highlight is that the technology exists and has been used in the past, which is cloud seeding, where you have the government or some agency literally trying to manipulate the weather. And so just wanted to highlight this because again, going back to the point of a lot of what these kleptocratic elite do is to control you, whether it be in the realm of energy, food, money. They can manufacture weather events too to drive fear, to use that as a lever to control you as well. So we'll play this as a short clip. It's only 30 seconds.
The day before the worst floods in 40 years. Cloud seeding is a technique used to increase rain. Hydro Tasmania has confirmed it flew a cloud seeding flight despite the weather warnings. Farmers believe the technique could have made the flooding worse. The Premier says a formal inquiry will be held into the effect and handling of the floods if it's necessary.
So cloud seeding in Australia, it's been documented. It's happened before. A lot of flooding going over there now. There's a lot of Australians and others out there who are interested to discover if there's been any cloud seeding in the area in recent weeks and months. So just be aware, this technology exists. We also had the CERN or what the fuck is it called? The thing that blasts protons together. That turned back on today.
The Hadron Collider.
The Hadron Collider. That turned back on earlier this week. Have you noticed any Mandela effects? Any rips in the universe?
I have not. Have you?
Can't say that I have. Not yet. No.
I just have to say, like, if someone on Twitter was like, I'm not traveling to Europe because of CERN. Like, is that us winning, or are we losing or winning in that situation?
I wouldn't not travel to Europe because of CERN.
Like, if you're sitting in fear because of this thing that's happening over in Europe.
Oh damn, dude.
Large Hadron Collider.
We've got some breaking news here.
Do we? Is it real breaking news or is it fake engagement breaking news?
No, it seems real. Looks like Peter Wulla has stepped down as a Bitcoin Core maintainer. He's given up he removed his key from the trusted key setup at Bitcoin Core 30 minutes ago.
Hopefully he comes back as a NIM.
Would love that. It was remove my key from trusted keys. Yeah, it looks like.
Well, shout out to Peter for all the great work he's done. True legend. Grateful that we've had him working on Bitcoin for so long.
Yeah, true legend. Libsec P 256K is one of the most important libraries in Bitcoin Core. On top of that, he's did a bunch of work on Taproot and stuff like that. We'll be interested to see if he elaborates on why he wanted to remove his key that enabled him to be a Bitcoin Core maintainer. So hopefully, maybe we'll have something to talk about next week in that regard. But very interesting to see. Is that breaking news? Is that like...
That's real breaking news.
Yeah, that's real breaking news. I don't know how I feel about that. We'll see, though. Let's let some time pass. Matthew, we've been here for 2.5 hours. I've been rambling a bit. It's my first time back in the Jersey Shore. I'm a little out of my element right now, even though I'm back in an element I was in for 1.5 years.
A little bit out of my element, back in my element. Well, it was a good rip. I look forward to seeing y'all in person next week. Look forward to ripping it in person next week. Should be a good time. And I look forward to showing you the studio. It's going to be fucking fire.
Can't wait to see it. Can't wait to see Bitcoin Park. Can't wait to give you a hug in person.
It's been a minute.
Freaks, it's been a minute. Freaks, thank you for joining. Again, if you're listening via Podcasting 2.0 compatible app and you're boosting, we thank you for that. We really appreciate that you're getting value out of this. We hope we're delivering that. Trying to get the signal out there. Matt, you lit a fire under my ass with those comments earlier, saying we were more high signal.
We were so much more high signal.
How? It's
okay. It's important to be. We should hold ourselves to a higher standard than everyone else. I think that's what. Like, if you're going to be critical of other people, if people are going to be, if you're going to be critical of other people, you have to hold yourself to even a higher standard, I think, and that's how we improve. So,
agreed. All right, now I'm thinking of ways how we can improve the signal on the show. So again, you lit a fire under my ass. Freaks, if we're never providing you signal, please let us know if we ever slip in your eyes. But yeah, I will see you in person next week, Matt. I'm going to go enjoy a weekend at the Jersey Shore here. I hope you enjoy your weekend as well. Any big plans?
No, I'm just gearing up. Like, my plan is to rip a shit ton of podcasts, a ton of dispatches next week. A lot of people coming into town. It's just gonna be just constant chilling and ripping and meeting and drinking and eating, discussing Bitcoin. So I'm just gonna try and rest up this weekend and prepare myself, because I'm already preemptively exhausted, but in the best way possible.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm going to mentally prepare too. I'll see you next week. And freaks, that's all we got this week. Peace and love.